The following are the words of Lou Civello, president of the Suffolk County Police Benevolent Association.
Police officers risk their lives to protect our communities and keep our streets safe. These officers are the thin blue line that stands between your family and the criminals that would do them harm. We are your neighbors, protecting your neighborhood. Hold the line. Support law enforcement. Stand with the Suffolk County PBA.
The following radio show is live, except for the announcement you're hearing right now.
Welcome back to Your Island Live with your host, Tom Schiliro, on 103.9 LI News Radio.
And once again, welcome back. Moving right along. Sitting in for the president of the PBA, Lou Civello, is our good friend. On the program quite a bit, folks, C.J. Hutter. Many of you are familiar with C.J. because I know you're all sneaking on that PBA website there and finding on YouTube and so on patrol with the Suffolk County PBA. And C.J. Hutter is one of the hosts over there and just doing a fantastic job. I want to talk a little bit about that whole program and the value of it. But C.J. Hutter, how are you?
Hey, Tom, how are you? It's good to be back on.
Absolutely. I watched your On Patrol with the Suffolk County PBA, and it is available on YouTube. I'm correct, because that's where I watch it. It's on YouTube. Am I correct about that, CJ?
It's on YouTube. It's also on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Pandora. We're on a bunch of different platforms now at this point.
Yeah, and I am watching it, and I want the folks to, tune in. I'm telling you, the show is graded in terms of informational purposes of what and how important that the PBA is. But they have a whole array of people. It's not just all about police and things like that. They're talking about community members. It shows you the value of police departments, particularly our unions and our PBAs, getting involved with their community. Because I think without that, you cannot be effective. And so I'll start with that with CJ. What are you up to? 66 episodes now?
Yeah, so we actually put out 67th last week. This week will be our 68th. And as you said, it's not just about, the regular day-to-day police work, which we do love to highlight. We love to highlight the work our police officers are doing day to day, but we also highlight some of the local businesses that support law and order. We like to highlight some foundations that help support first responders and military personnel. We really like to highlight pretty much anything or anyone who helps form the sort of society that we all love to live in here in Suffolk County.
And I think that's so valuable. I speak, obviously, Lou comes on, President Lou Civello of the Suffolk PBA is on every other week. And we talk about how the focus is always on the community and working with the community and putting out there on how great our police officers are. And I know people there, they don't like the cops. They get mad at me when I say things like that, but I don't care. Because when you think about the accomplishments of policing in Suffolk County and to the greater extent, Nassau, New York City, and the rest of the country. Like, for instance, just today, of course, I watched the morning news. I try to watch some of the national news and so on. And I think it was in Texas. And they had the floods over there and something, and a car was sinking in the water, and there was a little baby in the strapped in a car seat. But she was like a toddler, like just I can't even imagine how young that kid was, and the child was. And two police officers from the local sheriff's department, they made an unbelievable rescue. But yet nobody's going to talk about it. You're not going to really, dwell on things like that, too. Isn't that what we're missing so that the folks can really see what's going on, CJ?
Oh, 100%. Police officers are out there throughout the country doing heroic acts every day. We were just down in Washington, D.C. for the NAPO Top Cop Awards, and they were highlighting the LAPD and the LA Sheriff's Office during the fires that occurred in California, in the LA area, and how those police officers were out there doing their jobs, evacuating people from these neighborhoods in danger. Meanwhile, their own homes and families were in danger, but they had to go to work. They had to do whatever they could to help support the families that they serve day to day in their police work. And we saw that here in Suffolk County, too. Back during the COVID epidemic, police officers were going to work every day when other people were quarantining in place, when other people were, working from home or not working at all. Police officers were still going to work every day.
That's right. Again, and I can remember at the time, there was a good number of officers that got ill from COVID because they couldn't take the same precautions that many of us on Long Island did. If you notice, LIE was empty, the New York State Thruway was empty. People were staying home because they didn't want to catch this thing. But the cops couldn't stay home. They had to be out there. They had to answer calls and so on. And that's just really one part of it when we do think about the sacrifices that our officers make. And I get very frustrated with the mere fact that it is not underscored. And then there are so many of these negative YouTubers out there. And most of them have criminal records. I've spoke to Lou Civillo about this quite a bit. Most of them have criminal records. They hate cops. Yet they have a following. And they put out these YouTube videos that are absolutely horrific. So I think when we have something like On Patrol with the Suffolk County PBA, C.J. Hutter, the host, and I think that's important. And that's why it's important for us to get the word out there. This is one of the programs, one of the avenues that can provide information about real policing. And those are the cops that are just working hard every single day. And I'd have to say it's tougher today than it was back when I had first gone through the academy and so on and got out on the street. It's a whole different world today, but the young men and women today are able to do it. Which brings me to the whole idea is, in your mind, the 67, 68, 69 episodes that you're doing, informational programs like what you provide, how valuable is that to try to counteract these ex-cons that are on the YouTube?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's something that we felt like we had to do because we were at a point where all the negative news stories and these negative YouTubers were getting all the attention, and the day-to-day heroic actions that 99.9% of cops are out there doing every day, those were getting discarded, and those were not getting the attention they deserved. It was really getting drowned out by a few bad stories spread throughout the country every couple of months. Meanwhile, there's heroes out there every day, and we really want to try to highlight that. And, one of the things that we like to highlight is, you had mentioned it a couple times, the community aspect of it all. Most Suffolk County police officers live in Suffolk County. This is where our homes are. This is where our families live. And a lot of our cops really take a lot of pride in policing the right way. Because when they're out there doing the job, they know there's families relying on them, just like they're relying on their coworkers to protect their families at home when they're stuck at work.
And I think one thing that you're accomplishing and the PBA is accomplishing with the On Patrol Suffolk County PBA, folks, if I'm going to say it 10 times, I'm probably going to say it 10 times because I want you to listen and I want you to watch it. Watch the show. It's actually visual too. That it underscores the facts that you just made. It shows that, hey, we are a part of the community and we are going out there. I know you had the Foundation Warrior Ranch on. I don't know if I'm getting that right. Or the Warrior Ranch Foundation. I've done something with them. These are all great organizations. And police departments, police officers, as you just said, are part of the community. And we have to, give a strong point to that it's not just all about law enforcement, how important that is. Who makes up the program for you guys? How do you decide the type of program content that you do have?
Yeah, so Tater and I always discuss kind of a game plan going forward. And we based on whatever's going on in the communities at a given time, we try to hit hot topics, at least within the first responder communities. So you had mentioned the Warrior Ranch Foundation. Just a couple of weeks ago, there was a fundraiser benefiting the Warrior Ranch Foundation at Pickleball Heaven in Medford. So we recorded an episode from on location at the fundraiser. We interviewed the founders of the Warrior Ranch Foundation. We interviewed several volunteers that work for Warrior Ranch Foundation. But we also interviewed other PBA board members, other union members. Sheriff Toulon was there. Dan Panico, the town supervisor of Brookhaven, was there. Elected officials that support the foundation. And also the owner of Pickleball Heaven himself, Ricky. Great guy. He wants to utilize his venue to do things to help benefit the communities that he works in, that he lives in. So he was looking for foundations to help benefit, and Warrior Ranch was one of the first ones that they did something for, which was great. Because Warrior Ranch, they service first responders, military personnel. They specialize in the equine therapy that is really starting to become more and more popular. And it's something that I hadn't really heard of up until, maybe 4 or 5 years ago.
No. It's almost like the promoting of a greater understanding. Unfortunately, and I don't want to sound too crazy, but there's evil out there. And the evils of those individuals that try to control, and I'm going to use the word propaganda, the propaganda against policing in America, and even to a greater extent of what is good and what is common sense. To me, the person with a rap sheet of 15 crimes, 10 felonies, 5 misdemeanors, whatever, that your officers are bringing in on a regular basis tells you something about a failure of a system that keeps letting people go. And this is what officers have to do. There has to be a greater understanding of that and the work that police officers do. But when you have, again, the social media that works against that, and that we here in Suffolk County have your program and some of the things that you're going to do, it to me, it makes it that much more important of the work of the PBA and what they're trying to do with something like this, because we're being overwhelmed. There are times that I have to shut the TV off when I see all this stuff popping up, and most of it just nothing more than downright lies and propaganda in favor of the criminal. And then to bring me to the topic that I do want to take up with you is what's happening in New York State. They want a non-cooperation agreement between local law enforcement and federal law enforcement. And that's about simply what it is. And we have seen this happen all over the country. But now you got Governor Hochul that wants to use this as a foundation of her campaign. And she had come on our show she come on on Jay's show on this channel last week, talking about how it's going to be in the budget. And then our legislators are pretty much going to be blackmailed. You want the budget? You want school aid? Well, now you got to vote for pretty much an anti-police bill, which is really what it is, because something like this should never stand. And this is what we're fighting against. How does that make you feel that when we have this legislation that it's going to be bamboozled upon us?
Well, you mentioned a term just a few sentences ago, common sense. And I think that barring local law enforcement from cooperating with federal law enforcement partners defies common sense. We need to be able to work together. There are different tools at the disposal of federal law enforcement that the locals don't have, and local law enforcement might know a little bit more about some of the local issues that federal law enforcement agents are trying to investigate or trying to help us with. So there's a natural partnership there that should not be interfered with. And, we were just in Washington, D.C. a couple of weeks ago, and we sat down and had a meeting with Anthony D'Esposito, the investigator general for Department of Labor. And he was talking to us about wanting to create some sort of policy where local law enforcement has to notify federal law enforcement when they discover certain levels of fraud, because they have that fraud task force that Anthony D'Esposito is a part of there in Washington with J.D. Vance. And they want to be able to use the local knowledge to help their federal fraud investigations. And laws like this, where we can't cooperate, would interfere with some of that fraud being discovered and eventually prosecuted.
And I think the biggest problem that I have a lot of problems with it, is the way the governor is spinning it. Again, she was on our airwaves. She was on the LA and the AM show with Jay Oliver right here, 103.9. And she said that this will open up local law enforcement to deal with local crime and local problems. And that just makes my blood boil, because in essence, crime is crime. If it's a federal offense or it's a state offense or it's a local town of Brookhaven offense, there are still levels of victimization. But she's trying to spin it, a very far left radical proposal, and she's trying to spin it in a very moderate conservative way, that all I'm doing with this legislation, this non-cooperation agreement, is to help the local police do their local job. And that is to stop crime on the local level. How would you answer that? Because to me, it's a downright lie.
Yeah, I don't think that explanation makes sense. Locally, barring us from cooperating with federal law enforcement only basically bars us from utilizing more tools that are possibly out there for us. So if we could partner with federal law enforcement and build up cases together and investigate things together, there might be certain instances where local laws don't necessarily allow us to maybe hold a bad guy on bail. But maybe there's some federal statute that a federal law enforcement officer could enforce and lock up a bad guy and not let these people just walk freely among us. I mean, we've seen issues with bail in New York State constantly. I mean, here on Long Island, there were recently several gang members who were caught with Molotov cocktails in a car, ready to do damage, an act of terror. And those guys had to be let out without bail because of some of the flawed criminal justice reforms that we've seen over the last several years in New York. So I think barring us from cooperating with the feds would just be another one of those bad laws in that same sort of line.
Yeah, there's the Suffolk County District Attorney who usually follows Lou Civillo on this program. He spoke about that case, and there was a couple of things I had some thoughts on it. It was a very dangerous case, but yet based on the laws and the cashless bail, and obviously those individuals had to be released, and there was really should not have been. But I think about the danger that the Suffolk cops put themselves in when they made what to me is one of the best collars around. And yet we're putting our officers in harm's way, and yet the legislative process is not supporting them. And that's got to be a topic that we talk about all the time. CJ?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, there was another case recently where there was somebody charged with the rape of a child. And
5-year-old.
I helped. And, barring us from cooperating with the feds only takes tools out of the toolbox to maintain safety for the residents here in Suffolk County. It defies common sense. We like to go back to that term, common sense, all the time. You don't want to overthink anything and then, come against common sense. Common sense it's a natural instinct for a reason.
One of our regulars on the show is Kevin Catalina, the Suffolk County Police Commissioner, a great guest. He's on with us every other Wednesday. And he spoke about briefly last week about a Suffolk officer that kind of was doxxed. I think his wife was doxxed. I may be getting this wrong. I'm pretty sure you know a little bit about it. And the fact that we need to restore legislation like 50A where the backgrounds of police officers are not public and should never be public like that. How are we combating that? I mean, that's horrific. That's horrific. That's one of the things where the good guys are the bad guys and the bad guys are the good guys. CJ?
Yeah, that's another thing that just makes our blood boil because, police officers, we sign up for this job. We know it could be dangerous. It's a risk we take to serve our communities. It's a calling. But our spouses, our children, they don't necessarily answer that same calling. And for spouses and children to start getting contacted by bad guys who are arrested by us and start to feel threatened, that should be a game changer for everybody. Nobody should be allowed to threaten innocent people, innocent third parties. And that's what's starting to happen here in New York State. It gets to a point where too much information is a bad thing, too. And people should not be able to find and locate our spouses and children. It's something that, again, defies common sense. There should be harsh repercussions for something like that. And this is something that should be universally condemned and worked towards preventing in the future.
And as we have a few minutes left, the New York State Legislature, we do the Albany Report on Thursdays. We have pro-common sense legislators, for lack of a better term, Doug Smith and Jody Giglio and Senator Murray. They work real hard to make sure that we have a pro-police agenda, only because I call it a pro-public safety agenda for the people that live in our communities. It's not solely about police officers. It's about the protection of our police officers in order to protect our community. To me, I'm not optimistic that some good, like maybe the HALO law or something like that can pass, but yet we're going to see legislation that just works the opposite. What is your feelings on that?
Yeah, so the HALO law is something we're working towards, in New York State and nationally as well. Kwani O'Farrell, one of our local electeds here in Suffolk County, is sponsoring it on the Assembly side, and then on the Senate side, it's Senator Jessica Scarcella-Spanton out of Staten Island. So that we do have the HALO bill in both houses. Hopefully, it could get enough support. it does nothing to jeopardize the First Amendment. And I know that that's one of the big criticisms out there, but the HALO law would not stop anybody from recording an incident occurring or reporting on an incident occurring. All it does is create
Yes.
an area of
Yes.
a protective halo where people have to stay far enough away where they're not interfering for
Right.
responders.
And I'm hoping that we're going to see that pass, and we're going to be talking a lot about it with you folks. Once again, C.J. Hutter from the Suffolk County PBA. C.J., thanks for sitting in today. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. Always appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely. We're going to take a short break. When we get back, let's take some phone calls. Really, the rest of the show, 631-451-1039.